So, how do you choose an intro for a show that you interviewed one of your most incredible friends who has interviewed more of the most powerful, thought leading, heart provoking, like deepest, most influential people? We have hundreds and hundreds of takeaways from this episode. And so I'm going to try to condense a few of them into the intro to set some context for you. And by the way, if you're watching this on video, this studio, as you know, it will be disappearing soon as we are moving again, as Lindsay and I found a house for both of us to move into for the next couple of years. And I'll be backpack studioing. So maybe I'll record outside. Maybe I'll record in a short bus. I don't know. I got a vision here, but we're going to talk about today's show. I had my dear friend on, and there was a show of tears and gratitude and joy. And we covered so much ground that this is going to be a reference episode for me to come back to. We talked about societal expectations and comparison, how it can lead to a sense of misalignment and unhappiness. We talked about how context is just as important as content when sharing, how contemplating one's own death and legacy can provide clarity and perspective for present day you, how the masculine is facing challenges in today's society and new structures and support mechanisms are needed. And one note on that, the masculine is not just for men, as all of us have a masculine and feminine body, and most business is masculine. We have talked about how tools such as deep questioning, self-awareness, and meditation can help navigate life more smoothly. We are void of rites of passages. We're void of support mechanisms and structures. We talk about how the masculine is just here to provide structure, and there's a challenge in the structure overall that's just happening everywhere because the old paradigm is dying and the new is coming. And it's not really a challenge. It's just a mess. And then imagine politics with everybody, but they would be required to meditate and so much more, plus a couple of things that we said that might get us canceled. And I'm totally here for it because I just figured I'm uncancelable at this point because I cancel myself and I love you and I have you listening. And so as long as you keep listening, they can't cancel us. And so that's what we cover in today's episode, plus so much more. So strap your seatbelt in, tighten it down, get ready for the most incredible ride, lots of laughs, lots of tears. But without further ado, let's get into the show. All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Mind of George show. And if you are watching this and you're wondering, we're in stitches, and I'm even matching Australia language patterns now because I'm picking up for the guest. In the last literally 15 minutes, have fallen in love with a man and forgot to hit record so many times. And I was like, we got to hit go because all the juice is leaking out before we record this thing. And I don't even know how to begin this. But I am actually, and I'm going to make this claim, so honored to be joined by my brand new friend, Amrit, on a level that I can't even articulate. But let me give you some normal George context. I don't even want to speak because I want this man to be my alarm tone, my go-to-bed tone, and deliver every message from every downloadable source to me because it is the most soothing, beautiful, heart-opening delivery ever. And every time he speaks, I fall more and more in love with him. And so he is an absolute G. And I'm going to use the word G because he's also super humble and just over here like a ball of joy opening me up. And I am so excited to unpack today's conversation, and it is a beautiful one. And he is the man behind Inspired Evolution, but I will tell you that it's all going to make sense as soon as I let him open his mouth in a minute because I am in love. I was like, hey, I don't know if you know this, but some of our mutual friends you know as well, and I'm going to bring you into the monogamous love circle of me and men that I love, and so consider me your new world wife over here because I'm in. So without further ado, I'm going to stop my love diatribe over here and welcome Amrit to the show. So Amrit, welcome to the
show. George, wow. I know you're waiting for me to speak, but what does one say to that? I love you too. I don't
know, but if anybody listening appreciates your voice as much as I do, I'm just going to shut up and let you say whatever you want to say.
Touch wood. That is very, very incredibly humbling to receive. Thank you so much for, just the love. And like you said, it's there's so much great synergy in this space and just feeling your vibe and everything that's created. I'm really, like you said, it's a pleasure to be here, but it's also an honor for me to be here on your show, brother. It's I love what you're doing in the world and the frequency that you're carrying around it. And to just, like we were saying earlier as well, like it's just so heart-opening, even like to just feel other brothers doing the work and just, championing positivity around the world for what I in some ways I feel like is inevitably coming anyway. We're just kind of conduits for what's already kind of happened. But then also, like laying our stake on one side of the line in the sand and going, no, this is what we stand for, And so, Yeah, really, really an absolute honor to be here. And thank you so much for having me and the incredibly wonderful heart opening introduction, brother. Thank you so much.
Oh yeah, if any of you have ever watched The Notebook, like if you're a bird, I'm a bird. I'm running towards you, bro, and I want one of those like big catch me, twirl me around hugs, and I'm like, yes, like I am in, and I am all about turning up the volume knob of
Careful,
all
careful
of
what you
this
wish for, because
radiance
I'm a
and
big bear
positivity.
hugger. I'm like,
Oh no, oh I'm very aware. I'm confident enough in my masculine that you can hold me, you can twirl me around, and I will blush and turn into a puddle of the most monogamous man love ever. Like
the
I'm a bucket
unending
over
hug.
here.
don't you two have
Yeah, the
podcasts to
unending
get back
hug. Yeah.
to? No, we just fused now. This is what
No,
happened.
we're here. We're here. And I'll throw our other brothers in it too. Like Chris is coming in, Nikhil's coming in, Steph's coming in. Like we might have a 5-person like
Fusion.
man podcast because we just can't get off of it. Yeah, just fusion.
I love it. I love it. I
Just
love it.
fusion. Oh my God. Okay. Okay. Back on track, George. Like I'm blushing over here. Like I feel like I have like a man crush celebrity over here. Um, I'm actually
Mm.
I can ask this so incredibly well. And for anybody listening to this, I'm sure you can hear in his voice, but if you're watching this, you radiate, like I mean with ease. Like there's this delivery, there's this tonality, there's this love that radiates from you that I can see and feel that comes from you like living in your
Mm.
purpose and living in alignment. And it is the thing I am most excited to talk to you about. And I was even joking that I'm like the bull in the china shop trying to drive it
Touch
into people
wood.
because that's how I went
Mm.
into myself. And you have the most eloquent delivery. But I would love for you to even break this down because we had so many like in a matter of compressed time before we hit record juicy nuggets around alignment and purpose. And it's something that I hear thrown around
Mm.
so often and so frequently. And I feel like there's no texture given to it to make it
Mm.
tangible for people. And the way that you started to articulate it to me was like,
Yeah.
okay, stop. We have to hit record. So can you just take the mic and break down purpose in your lens and how you see it because it is
Oh
so
wow.
beautiful.
Okay, thank you. And I guess honoring the depth with which you're asking me, especially that word texture is a really beautiful word. You're asking me to fill it out. So yeah, the way I was describing it to you, purpose is something. There's a couple of entry points into this conversation. Let's start with one where I don't actually see myself as a purpose coach, which is pretty trippy for most people. Yeah, I see myself more of as a health coach, and yes, like physically I'm fit and emotionally well, and touch wood, so you can sort of be like, oh yeah, I can see him being a health coach to some degree. But really, what it is I struggled with career misalignment, 6 years of depression at various points in my life. I've been through a couple of dark nights of the soul, and there was this point of being out of alignment. And that word alignment is actually a word that means a lot to both you and I. And both times recalibrating, realigning actually had more than a therapeutic effect. It was like, well, in some ways, the hero's journey is ever present, right? Like I had to go through those dark nights of the souls to find the pearl, to come back and be like, oh my God, pearl, like guys, check out pearl, like, and then pursue the things that I was actually made to pursue. And so the interesting thing being, I see myself as a health coach. The world sees me as a purpose coach, but also, and this was the interesting trippy dippy bit, the people that are already aware of the word purpose to some degree, you guys have already started to pull at the thread to recalibrate into a particular direction. So potentially for yourselves, like the work is, yes, it's important, but there are people out there that, are literally having existential crises around like career, leadership, life. And that's why when, we did a whole bunch of market testing, it's like what we do is like the Amrit said, it's life, leadership, life, career and leadership coaching. And it's like intrapreneur and entrepreneurs, whatever. It's about living spiritually aligned. So it's really interesting because it's very, I want to say 3D, the title of the coaching, but then when you sort of unpack it, it's like spiritually aligned living. And so, yeah, all of that to say, that's one avenue of just how purpose meets different people in different ways, depending on where they're at on the journey, and highlights some of the importance of it. one of the questions that early on gets asked, and this is another entry point into the conversation, is, hey, like, do we all have a purpose? Why this purpose thing? Why is it so important? I fundamentally do believe that we all have a purpose. There's 8 billion of us here. The universe has this thing where it's looking in on itself. So that's pretty trippy. Like, that's a pretty foundational philosophical sort of belief that everybody that comes to coaching with me, we share. I believe it's pretty spiritual. Outside of religion, it's like, hey, consciousness right now is folding in on itself and looking in on itself and having this really weird dual experience of like, there's George, here's Amrit, and here's you listening into the podcast. Like, the three of us, like, what is actually going on? Like, but everything is actually one, emerges from a unified field. Pretty trippy. So to draw on that, there's a lot to be said, but there's also not a lot that we can conclusively draw upon. But one of the things we can potentially conclusively draw upon is the fact that the universe is curious, right? Like, it's looking in on itself. So in that, it's found multiple lenses within which to sort of peer in and sort of experience itself. And now we can talk about what it potentially is trying to perceive and what it's trying to learn. Self-love would be a great answer, I believe. But nonetheless, there's like this whole experience that it's having looking in on itself through each individual lens. So no two lenses, each individual, and that's beyond humans, right? Species, the entire experience is superfluous for the grand design of it all. So I don't really believe in coincidences, which is pretty full on for some people to hear. But I think everything is happening for a purpose, for a reason. But all of that to say, each individual is perfectly placed in their life with a purpose as well. From there, the question often bleeds in, I don't really feel on purpose, or I've got a lot of existential angst. And I think that's where another thread into the conversation opens up around what takes us off purpose. And just to honor the depth of the platform that's here, you're never really off purpose, which is kind of trippy. It's like, Amrit, what are you even doing as like a purpose? It's like, we're never off purpose. Even when you're furthest off purpose is when it's actually recalibrating you back to purpose, that hero's journey again. I had that existential crisis where I was like, I'm a purpose coach. Everyone's always on purpose. Whoa, like, but the realization of that was, we're all meant to be in alignment and actually feeling in alignment and drawing upon the energy that comes from when you're in alignment. And I call that, we trademark the term here in Australia, meta flow, because it's flow that you feel on a meta level. Like, it's that really high level flow where, oh my God, synchronicities are popping in and all this sort of stuff is just going my way. And there is no small example, like I was coached by Eckhart Tolle for 6 months and I'm like, I'm just Amrit, like Eckhart Tolle, like how the fuck? Like, how does something like that get to happen? And it's like, well, when you're following your path, things that are too great to happen, touch wood, kind of happen. And so, that's just one little example. But yeah, so all of that to say, I think we spend a lot of time in society living into society's expectations, familial expectations of the environment we're brought up in. And so all of those sort of feed into our subconscious after a while, we can't even differentiate them from our own expectations. And so we build a life built on expectations. And now, having done the work of a life coach for the longest while, 7-8 years, one of the things that is ever apparent is the minute someone even mentions an expectation, you're sort of just waiting for them to be depressed, right? It's like, if I go to the shops and, I bring back George, a green smoothie, he's over the moon about it. He's like, fuck, green smoothie. Thanks, bro. But if I'm like, hey, George, I'm going to the shops, I'll get you a green smoothie. I go to the shops, I don't have a green smoothie. I come back with coconut water. He's like, oh, bro, where the smoothie at? And it's like, but what about the coconut water? And George is George, so he'd be grateful. But you get the idea. It's like, there's that expectation that sort of let him, like, that he felt let down. So the expectations always lead to depression. That's a 1-for-1 trade, right? You can't really have the expectation and not expect to. And then opening up a little thread in there and tangentially is like, when was the last time you had an expectation that was met? When I share this from stage, it's usually 15% of the time. Yeah, which is quite low when you think about how depressing that really is just from that frame.
Yeah.
So all of that to say we have these big expectations plugged into our life around what our life should be like, could be like, we ought to be doing, etc., etc. And that sort of takes us off kilter to some degree because our lens is focused over here, which is like 60 degrees, 90 degrees away from where it should be focused. Again, I'm shooting on you, so pardon me for that, but could be focused, or its natural inclination, had society and all of that stuff not intervened, would have been focused, all of that to sort of say that's when you're maximally in flow, and the aperture is what I've been using the term recently. Your great spirit and your personality are lined up and amazing things happen. So there becomes the work, which is like, hey, what have you taken on from society and all this sort of stuff to bring back into calibration? Now, all of that to say the key thing that generally brings people to the people that I end up coaching the most are generally type A people. So they're type A achievers, like they've smashed achievement. CEOs, Entrepreneur of the Year, Malaysia, like head of Navy, not Navy SEAL, Air Force units in doing rescue missions in South Africa. Like, some really incredible people. When you look from the outside in, it's like you're making serious bank, you're doing incredible things, you should be successful. And my story was not too dissimilar. Like, I hadn't made it to that level, but like, building high-rise towers, construction, doing all sorts of amazing projects, working for a multinational organization, working my way up through the ranks here in Melbourne, Australia. I had, quote unquote, made it. And so many people have made it, and yet it looks like that termite mound. It's like something really huge has been built outside, but when you look inside, it's completely hollow, and you're like, oh my God, there's so much void in here. It's void of meaning. And that meaning is really, it becomes more and more important. And I think given the world the way that it is constructed at the moment, awash with social media, awash with mass marketing, lots of different things, comfort and convenience is probably has a large thing to play for it. And I wouldn't even demonize comfort and conveniences, because this is what our forefathers strived to give us. But here we are nonetheless. When there's not much challenge, there's not that feeling of inherent purpose. And so there is a crisis of meaning, I would say, going on at the moment. And that then leads into these stats where you see that 1 in 2 are anxious or depressed. That's a pretty harrowing stat. And we can talk more about mental health. But I think that sort of opens up the conversation around purpose in about 4 different frames and gives us a bit of a tapestry here to really understand what I see purpose as. It's a 1-for-1 with meaning, and finding meaning in your life and generating meaning, activating meaning in your life. Hopefully that's a nice place to start.
Tapestry is a beautiful word to describe the texture.
You started it with texture, by the way.
Yeah, that was. I feel like I just watched you paint a canvas with words in front of me, and I know that's my gene keys and human design and all that stuff, and I can see it. But I was like, oh my God, like you just also collapsed like 8 million thoughts, videos, books that I've read all into one, and I can tell you that the existential crises that you've been in, I've kept a photo on my phone recently that's been coming up every time I go to talk, because I end up in these buckets of entrepreneur rooms where they're like, George, we know you know how to help us make more money. And I'm like, yeah, but if that's the goal, you've already lost. I promise. Just listen to me. And they're like, no. And I'm like, no, trust me. I was like, do you want me to show you what it looks like? And I was like, I pull up this photo, and I was like, this photo is when every single one of you is telling me, keep going. Good job. You're crushing. I was 110 pounds or 48 kilos heavier than I am now. It looked like there was no soul in my body. I was bags under my eyes. Like, you could see the breaking of everything, and I was lost in that trap. And I was like, is that really what you want? And they're like, and I was like, yeah. I also walked away from it all because it was so empty on the inside, right? So even hearing you talk about that, because the thing for me that was missing was meaning, the belief there was a finish line, or that there was I always remind myself of the whole hero's journey. And I'm like, George, it doesn't end when you slay the dragon. It ends when you return to the village to teach the lesson, and then the new dragon appears, right? And I'll send you this video after the show. I reference this video a lot, but I don't know if you're familiar with jiu-jitsu, but John Danaher was getting interviewed on Lex Friedman's podcast, and Lex Friedman asked him about the meaning of life. And John Danaher is like, quite frankly, the Elon Musk of jiu-jitsu theory, martial arts theory, and you just nailed it in your summary. And he's like, well, you have to understand, we as a human race, we won the game. We figured it out. Because you go back pre-industrial revolution, there were two things that everybody shared in common. There was a constant challenge, which if you didn't have food and you didn't have water, regardless of how you felt, required you to go create meaning, work, or create purpose to have it. And it was shared faith. The hustle was there, right? And we're also the only mammal that doesn't have a natural drainage for our lymphatic system when we experience trauma or triggers and all these stories and beliefs that we're caught or taught through paradigms, socioeconomics, religion, school, all of those things. And then it just stacks. And then we sit on the couch with Netflix and 70 degrees and there's no discomfort to challenge anything. And it literally, like you articulated it so beautifully. And I love the service piece more than anything, because, you know, I'm even like nervous saying this, but I've said it so many times and people have taken it out of context. And I was like, no, I crucify myself every night when I go to bed. Like, meaning, like, when I wake up, I imagine that my ex-wife is gone, my kids are gone, my business is gone. And I ask, who do I get to be today? Because I'm a different version. When I was blessed with another day in my life, God, to wake up. But to think that I'm operating from yesterday just feels like a hollow shell for me, because I don't want to check boxes and I don't want to do it, but it's been the most freeing thing ever to not have that attachment. And I kind of like love disappointment now, because I'm like, thank you. Like, thanks for waking me up. Like, thanks for showing me I had an expectation. Like, I'll take the coconut water all day, right? Like, and truth be told, it's probably a better option, because I get so ingrained in my habits and patterns that just become this like linear to-do trap, or this place where I convince myself I'm present, but when in actuality, I'm just operating on a script
There's
again.
something loaded.
And so, yeah. And so like, I like, that tickled my soul. The tapestry that you wove just collapsed to like what feels like 12 years of running down every rabbit hole of every medium, of every plant medicine, of every book, of every philosophy, of every many worlds theory, quantum mechanics, into like, yeah, you nailed it. And I think for me, alignment is something that I can never expect to be the same every single day. And I think that was the new trap that I fell into when I started coaching people. I'm like, oh, you got to figure it out. You got to figure it out. And I became a victim of my own work and Solomon's paradox, right? Because then it's like, oh, but there was no progression or growth. And so I love that you label yourself a health coach, because I feel like you're speaking to the deepest, most important parts, which is sovereign mental health. And that's really where I see the biggest opportunity, because we're surrounded by everybody telling us what to think and everybody telling us what to feel and who we get to be. And that's even why I had 5 100-pound weight gain and losses over my entire life. And it wasn't until 18 months ago. And even some of the things you said, like talking about space, I had a shaman, a very godly shaman, look me dead in the eye. And he's like, coincidences are just you getting out of God's way. But when have you ever been quiet enough to hear his whispers? And it was like, and then that led me to cut out all movies, all music, all TV, all reading for 3 years. And magically my career skyrocketed, because if I couldn't consume, the only thing I could do was create. Right? And you're like, oh, and it wasn't easy. It took about 6 months of every anger, dark night of the soul, losing everything, until I was like, oh, wait, I get to chop wood and carry water. I get to create that meaning. Right. And it was like this reclamation of like, it's mine, it's me.
Just something in there as well, how important that just even that particular thing is as well. Because I had a similar, not from a shaman, but it was, pardon, it's not as deep as what you were sharing. However, it was Tim Ferriss' 4-Hour Workweek. And he said at some point, he's like, in the book, he's like, most of you are entrepreneurial and you just like hardcore input 24/7. And he doesn't put it this way, but the way I downloaded it, and pardon me, because you were sharing something really deep, and now I'm almost blasphemizing it, but
We're
the way
still
he
deep,
shares
bro.
it, he goes,
No.
the way it downloaded was like, yeah, all this input is somewhat self-flagellation. Like you feel like you're building constructs in your mind and you're doing the work and you're doing stuff, but it's so mental. And mental in like every sense of the word. In some ways I would even say, because you build, it's like, oh yeah, and I've built this funnel and I've built that and I've built this and I've built this empire because I've watched such and such do such and such online. Like, I know how to do that. No, you don't. You've got the knowledge that exists, but you've got zero wisdom. Yeah, touch wood. And I hate to sound that absolutist, but I feel really, and so just how important that space where you gave yourself 3 years, and man, all your stuff comes to the surface, because a lot of that escape, like all of those tools are basically what we now know as escapism, right? And it's so, again, that comfort, convenience thing, us reaching for that adds to the death by a thousand cuts of just suppression, because that's another way to look at the purpose conversation, is like the opposite of suppression is expression. And then you've also got suppression being a 1-for-1 again for depression, like you're just depressing and pressing things down. And so learning to express your authentic self. And how do you do that in a sea of just when stuff's coming into you? If you just look at yourself as a box, stuff is just coming in all the time and you're filling up your cup on everything else. Where does the stuff that the box inherently wants to generate come out? Like, where do you space? And I love the way you describe that. It's like, yeah, God's whispers in when you're quiet enough to listen to it. That is so poetic, and giving yourself the space to just allow things to settle. And I'm not sure what it was like for you, but you'll notice I found is like, once I just sort of allowed things to settle, my own inherent self-worth sort of built up as well, because I wasn't sort of in this comparisonitis thing as well, which is like, oh, that person's already done this, or this person's doing that, etc., rah, rah, rah. And then as my self-esteem, it was like, oh yeah, and these are the things that I value. And then the whole conversation around value starts to get really deep. And then it was like, oh yeah, I want to share a little bit of this, and I want to share a little bit of that, and I'm comfortable sharing this, and I'm comfortable sharing that. And the wellspring starts to basically, I'm imagining in like an inversion. Yeah. It's like starts to share more and more. And I remember that period in my life, there was this visceral moment where I was like, I've done enough consuming, and I'm still consuming to the nth degree today. Don't get me wrong. Like, I research every guest for the podcast at least 10 hours before they come on the show. But there was this, at the time, it was just like an influx of information, but there was no output for it. And learning that, like, well, like this is not actually the healthiest expression of all of this, because I'm also being, it's an escapism to some degree, but I'm also like pushing myself down. And where is my authentic self in around this? These are my inspirational points. And that's actually where it was the inspired evolution. It was literally like the salmon trying to swim upstream. It was like, oh, I'm inspired by that. I'm inspired by that. I got no idea how to get there. Let's get him on the podcast. Let's have some of these conversations and let's weave our way upwards, onwards and upwards, touch wood. So, sorry, I've bled on the point, but I think it's a really important point to give yourself that space to listen to the universe, and I think so many of us on this path are, and it's ironic, right? Like, because people are probably consuming this right now and it's another source of input, but also recognizing, just being mindful of a source of input. And I'll just sort of add that in, just because we have the opportunity to talk shop about business stuff. That happens in business for me all the time as well. I'll end up with, like, because I've got great mates in great places doing great things, and they'll give me plenty of their time just because we're homies. And so you sit down and you chat, and it's like, you should be doing this, and it's like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And someone will be like, you should be doing this, and it's like, that makes a lot of sense. And it's like, they don't quite match up, and they're both right. And that was one of the biggest lessons. It's like, dude, everybody's right, carving their way forward. It's like, which road leads to Rome? Well, bro, they all do. But you kind of got to pick a path, pick any path, but pick one. And so even on business, it's the same thing. Like, my greatest amount of my success in business has come from doing less. And that sounds so like cheesy, but it's like, actually, I'm going to just do none of what everybody's telling me, shiny funnel syndrome, all that sort of stuff. Just let it all go and just do what just makes a lot of sense. Like you said, like relationships, just build those relationships, do the work where it feels really important, and the rest will sort of filter in. So again, it sounds super personal, like in your personal life, stop consuming, but it's also in business as well, do the work.
Yeah, well, I could literally talk to you for 20 hours a day. I love this all day because, like, I've also learned with myself, like because of the way I grew up and having to be self-reliant at 13 and basically care for myself, being homeless, living wherever I could, working, and then becoming a Marine. They're like, let's turn this into the greatest weapon ever, right? Like I became this like type A do. I will get there no
Mm-hmm.
matter what. But I also remember, and rather than, talk about this, I'll just share my own. It's like when I was consuming, I wasn't being myself. I was being somebody else's version of myself, right? Like the body that I had, right? Like I was like, oh my God, everybody will like me if I CrossFit. So I became one of the best CrossFitters in the world, but I wonder why I didn't stick around. And then I was like this and this. And like 18 months ago, when my wife and I decided to get divorced, and now we're the bestest of friends ever because we're both aligned, I took my same advice and I was like, what do I want? And all I wrote on a piece of paper is I want to do backflips with my grandkids at 85. That is all I wrote. And I'm not joking. And I didn't change a behavior. I didn't change my habits. But now at 40 years old, I have a six pack. And like for the first time in my life consistently, I work out like 3 days a week, but every other thing around me is aligned. And it was the same in business and content, right? And I think in the beginning, just like when I ran a food blog and I was learning how to cook, I didn't know how to cook, so I had to borrow
Mm.
recipes. But after I cooked a recipe a few times, I was like, oh, if I add this,
Yeah.
it'll taste better and it's mine. And if I add this, it'll taste better and it's mine. And I've spent, because of that type A, 15 years collecting fortune cookies that suck the oxygen out of all my bullcrap and like put me back in the present moment. Like I tell people on this podcast that I dream about the day that you
Mm.
stop listening so that you then go have your own and do your own. But it's okay to borrow, but it can never tilt who
Mm.
you are. And like even a new one I found, like they just finished a study with 25,000 people on the Spain level of emotions, and they realized, and it's been misquoted on TikTok a ton, but authenticity resonates 400 times stronger than love as the most resonant frequency for human beings. It is the 100% number one most resonant frequency. And it's not because of the bridge that you walk over or what steps
Mm.
that they follow. It's that it is felt and resonated
Mm.
so deep, but it's resonated on you believing what you know and say, which means it comes from self love, self acceptance, but also giving yourself the space to find your original thoughts and to choose what they are.
It's so interesting. That is such a remarkable revelation. I love the way you're sharing that. Thank you for sharing that, because yeah, you find, especially as a podcaster, like I've been interviewing people weekly for the last 7 years, and you realize context is just as important as content. Like I could come on here and tell you, I don't know, anything, to go carnivore. I could sit here and like tell you to go carnivore, but if I'm not carnivore, or I could tell you to go vegan, but if I'm not vegan, you're kind of like, oh yeah, like I heard that guy talk about that thing over there. But given my life's journey and the lens that I'm here to witness my life and what I'm here, and sharing that message from the bottom of my heart, it's like, well, I'm imagining it lands a certain way, experiencing others who have really embodied their biggest challenges, sharing it. And it's like, it comes back. And this is where people say storytelling is everything. Because when people are sharing their own stories, you can't help but be captivated. Right. And then just to sort of open up a thread that I think both you and I can enjoy is also like I think a lot about the old firesides. I can see the fire burning in the back there, and there's and sorry for being just super male for just one sec, but we've gone out, we've hunted, we've come back. Some guy has come back with a few ducks, and another guy killed a gazelle today. Yeah, and there's 2 fires in the camp. Which fire do you want to sit around? You want to hear about the story around how he got the gazelle, right? Because it's like, this guy came back with a gazelle.
Yep.
Like, those things motor. How did you catch and hunt the gazelle?
Yep.
And then you want to listen so you can get the knowledge, like we said before. But then at some point you want to apply that as wisdom, because you also want to be the person that maybe you don't get the gazelle, maybe you get the lion, maybe I don't know, maybe you get whatever you get, But at the same time, there's that experiential experience that you want to have of what is being shared. And I think that's where storytelling is so important, because it's wired into our DNA to learn via story, because it actually is coupled with our survival in such a deep way. And that's where, again, like, it's on when I start looking at it from that, it's like, it feels somewhat ironic that we need studies to tell us about authenticity, but then it's like such a gift that it's also reminding us that, like, yeah, bro, of course it is, because that's when you can feel into, oh yeah, this person, someone telling me how to hunt a gazelle that's never hunted a gazelle. This is also why, and we can get, like, I hate to sound like this, but this is also why I feel like some of the education models are really crumbling around the world around us right now when we go to university. Like, you got business school professors who have never run a business. And online, you've got people that run businesses going, hey, this is how I fucking smashed it. And you're like, I'm pretty clear if I spend $500 on a course with you as opposed to $50,000 of an education over here, I might actually get further with these $500, And so that's where things like that start to crumble as well. But now I've digressed a little bit further than I'd hoped, but nonetheless, I know go on.
I think, oh, go ahead. I was going to say, I actually think there's a thread in there when it comes to service and purpose, because at least for me, I got stuck in that trap of like, what's my purpose? What's my purpose? Instead of let me create my purpose, right? Like, people asking me like what I'm doing. And I shared this with somebody a couple of months ago, and I said, I'm 40 years old. And for the first time in my entire life, do I even have clarity on what I think I want my vision to look like? And I was a Marine for 13 years, and I've been doing entrepreneurship for 13 years. And like, I've hit the wickets, right? I was a New York Times bestseller. I had a #1 app. I made millions of dollars. I've consulted all the big companies. And I was like, yeah, bro, like, I was just turning over every rock, and now I know what I don't want. And now I'm getting closer and closer to like, oh, like, I crave depth. Like, I crave connection. I don't crave building a business that eliminates it. And every time I did, I subconsciously broke it. And I don't like to break things the light way. I like to break things
the glorious
big way, right? The glorious way. Like, if it's going down, like, it's going down in smoke. So there's no chance I can pick it back up again. Right?
We're laughing.
But I think, no, we should laugh at it. I'm so grateful for
I'm
it,
also
right? Like, I'm so grateful for it.
Through it in the moment, it's like, that shit hurts.
Yeah. And like, I'm at this point now where, like, even moving to Montana, like, on paper, I had everything that I claimed I ever wanted. And then the residue stuck around for a while, but like, I drive a Subaru Outback. I got my guns, my kids, and nature, and I don't want anything else. And I'm like, and then the rest of that time and space, I'm like, how can I connect with people? How can I serve people? Like, how can I have more fireside two-way conversations? And I swear, like, I'm the biggest student of the game. Like, I know nothing. Yeah, I might have strategies and tactics that I've figured out that work occasionally or all the time, but I still feel like I don't know anything. And the longer I'm in this, the more curiosity comes out. And it used to be fear, but now it's just pure curiosity. It's this like excitement of like, wow, like, there's so much more for me to learn about myself and execute. But like, I can say for the first time ever, I feel like I actually have purpose. I just don't know what it is.
Well, even as you're describing the curiosity and the flexibility of what you're up to in the world, and the way you're approaching things in an embodied way, that is still you being able to do backflips at 85, right? Because you're maintaining that flexibility in your body, but then also embodied in your mind. You touched on the point around create there, like, I'm creating my purpose. So just to sort of open the can of worms that is the Live Your Purpose program. This can of worms probably does it some injustice. Like, it's quite a well put together journey.
Maybe something more like, let's call it chocolate chip pancakes, because that's my favorite food.
With bananas though. Chocolate chip with bananas.
Of course, but I really only do cardio, so I can eat chocolate chip pancakes.
I found a hack actually in frozen bananas. I just freeze bananas and eat frozen bananas. It's like banana ice cream, but like so much better.
There's also a grape from Mexico called a cotton candy grape, and if you freeze it, it literally tastes like frozen cotton candy ice cream, and you can just eat them unlimitedly.
Something
It
about
is
cold
pure
sugar.
heaven.
Sugar's better cold. Like it just tastes better. I'm sure it's worse for you,
Yeah,
but it, it
facts.
tastes way better cold.
It's all relative.
The
It's
Living
all
Purpose
relative.
program, there's 3 pillars to it. It goes align, believe, create, right? And so those, and I cheesily call them the ABCs of purpose. The first part is all about you coming into alignment, right? And so the first part we look at, what are your values? What is your life story? As we've been sort of unpacking it, like the hero's journey. What are the biggest challenges you've happened to been on? What are the swords that you've collected along the way that you've slayed the dragon with? And then also we build out a vision very like multidimensionally. So that's the align piece, a vision across 12 dimensions of your life. Then the next piece is all about believe, and we start talking about, and that's probably one of the things worth sharing today about like the different where we sit in terms of like metaflow and how curiosity actually feeds into purpose. But then the last pillar is all about create. It's all about create because you can align yourself and you can get super, yep, cool, I got it. This is like everybody else's stuff. This is my stuff. And then this belief still needs to kick in. It's like, oh, but am I kind of worthy of like stepping out into my stuff? Like I'm not like, I wasn't conditioned and supported this way. And then ultimately it's like, yep, I believe I can do this. And it's like, all right, let's go create, like let's actually manifest and make happen the things that you were put here to do. And it's a lot of action, and it's a lot of messy action. It's a lot of messy action.
Yes.
And it's probably the hardest, most uncomfortable part, which is like, let's get out there. Let's just take a step in one direction. And it's probably the least sexy. The stuff I teach is pretty basic. It's like, make a to-do list of the things that like are in your head that you want to do. Just write it down, write the list down. And now that list is a to-do list, like tick shit off, can't tick it off. Let's put it in your calendar. Don't have a calendar. Let's get your Google Calendar set up. Now you've got to live out of this thing. Go take action on these things, tick off. And back to your point, having turned over every stone, one of my favorite quotes is actually from when I was reading Oprah's book. She said she was taught early on in her journey before she got her own network, got her own show, that particular juncture, she'd done a whole bunch of stuff, and her mentor said to her, hey, you're in a really good place. She's like, no, but I don't know what I want to do. I don't know what I'm up here for. I know I'm here for something, but I don't know what it is in the world. And the mentor said, you're in the second best place you could ever be. And she was like, what? And she goes, yeah, like the best place is to know what it is what you want to do and to be doing it. Granted. But the very second best place, and it's not second by like a lot, it's just the very second best place, is to know what you don't want. As frustrating as that may sound, because from that place, you can you potentially run the risk of toppling into what it is that you do want to do here in your life. And oftentimes, even the way we were articulating it before, it's like, what is it that I really want to create as a legacy? You notice, you mentioned guns, you mentioned nature, you mentioned your kids, you mentioned podcasting and connection. Your purpose is different across all the different dimensions of your life. Yeah. But I love the visual metaphor that we've got is like, I want to be able to backflip at 85. Your mind has to stay limber. Your body has to stay limber. Your emotions have to not be a block in your body. Spiritually, like you've got to be around at 85 and cultivating wisdom to impart into your kids, and also just what that symbology means to them. Like, hey, like, this is how flexible your papa is, and like he can smash some shit, and what's possible for you. There's so much in there. In just that very simple, like I wrote down a simple phrase and that's all I got for now. It's like, that's all you got? It's a lot, So,
well, I mean, there's texture underneath it, but like it had the most profound impact because it was the first time, because that same shaman, and I thank this man, his name's Brad, and he doesn't like when I name him, but I'll name him anyway. His name's Brad. And but he challenged every ounce of me because I was in the dark night of the soul. Like, I mean, Lindsay was 8 months pregnant. We were 3 weeks away from bankruptcy. I was literally at the quote unquote height of my career, millions of followers, like New York Times bestselling book tour. Well, I'm purging backstage with bulimia, overweight, everything. And I went to the jungle to get better, and he wouldn't let me sit with Mother Aya. And he's like, you have no purpose for your life. And I was like, that's why I'm here. And he's like, nuh-uh. And I was like yelling at him. I'm like, I paid so much money to be here. And like full Marine went in, and I was like, and he just sat there like, Mm-mm. And then he hit me with the nope. And I'm like, well, where am I supposed to find it? And then he hit me with the, when have you ever been quiet enough to hear God's whispers? And I was like, what does that mean, Mr. Miyagi?
Mm.
Like, and I was dropping expletive after expletive. Like, I was physically enraged, like physically enraged. And I was like, dude, do you know what I used to do? Like, do you know what I used to do? Like, do
Mm.
not do this to me. And he held that line and he said, listen, I would love nothing more, but you're going to get punished if you come in thinking somebody else can give you purpose. And he literally gave me one thing to write. And he said, write on a piece of paper, what is my purpose in life? And he's like, come back and see me when you can fill it out. And that's the first time I've ever been assigned to stillness
Mm.
practice. And it took 2 days. And I am telling you, and I have not talked about this, but I went through it all. I self-harmed because I never wanted to hurt people with the anger in my body. So I would hit myself to release it. I cried, I puked, I surrendered. I didn't sleep for like 2 days. And I got so physically exhausted that I just eventually passed out. And I woke up the next morning. Now I know it is God. And all I wrote on a piece of paper, my purpose, and it's still hanging up in my office, was to stand with structure in the face of resistance to create possibility. And that's the only thing that I wrote. That's why my branding is a lighthouse. That's why everything that you see exists the way that it does in relationships, speed algorithms came, because it gave purpose to my whole life. Why else would I have been sexually abused? Why else would I have been to war? Why else would I have seen the death that I saw? Why else would I have experienced and bled all over people for people that cut me? And I was like, because now I can meet anybody, anywhere, wherever they are, and have the deepest
Mm.
conversation. And that was the first time I ever actually like felt alive. And it wasn't easy. It took 7 years for me to look backwards and be like, oh, but it unlocked this, just this little permission slip in me to be like, I'm going to try everything, right? Because like I know. And it led to all these roller coasters. And then when that one with my son hit me, I was like, no, I've had it all. Like my bank account balance isn't going to be on my headstone. And everyone's like, how do you measure your success? And I was like, I don't care how many people show up to my funeral. I care how many people silently support my family without them knowing when I'm not here anymore. Like that's it. That is the whole end game for me. Like I'm not doing this for me. Like I'm doing this because my son's going to
Mm.
change the world. I'm just a stepping stone, right? Like we're the ones that broke the generational trauma for them. But I feel like once you get a taste of it, you're not supposed
Mm.
to know. If you get a taste and that gives you a heading on a compass, you just lock it in. And I ask myself every day, like, who do I
Mm.
get to be to bring this closer into life? And I've learned to value consistency and not value intensity, right? And it's all, perception. And, I write all these little quotes down for myself, and everyone's like, God, these land so much on the podcast. I'm like, bro, these are my sobriety. That's all these are. These are little oxygen eradicators of all my bull crap that comes out. Like, oh, you're thinking this again? There
Mm.
it goes again. But genuinely, that was the first one, and the one with Branson was the second one, because I'm like, no, like at the deepest level, the only thing I crave is life with my son. And what that means is I get life with all these other people. But I swear that like those words, like that sentence on a piece of paper changed my life. Like I didn't even realize I lost the weight. I went to get dressed one day, my pants didn't fit. And so I was like, bro, what happened? I'm like, I don't know, I lost like 40 pounds in like 2 months. And everything just fell in. And that is like the deepest one. But it wasn't about the labels, it wasn't about the work. And like the roller coaster since then, like me and my CEO, like I think our business has changed 86 times in the last 2 years, right? Because it's like, nope, that doesn't feel good. That doesn't feel good. That doesn't feel good. But you spoke to this earlier. Like the thing that I value more than anything
Mm.
now is time and life. And I've been gifted the ability to watch it be taken out of my friends in front of me. And I've faced it many times. And like at the deepest level, those values just like I can't not
Mm.
taste it. Like it's so visceral in my body, and it just feels like everything else is insignificant. And I'm like, oh, I don't care. I'm like, what are you gonna do? I'm like, do you know where I lived? Like, do you know what I saw? I'm like, oh, you think that's gonna upset me? Like, come on, bro. Like, You're like filling my love bucket right now. Like, this feels like a cuddle, right? And I love when you mentioned, like, when you collect swords of like the dragons that you slayed, and you have this awareness of your story, because I also recognize that I wouldn't
If it
be
wasn't,
here if it wasn't for that entire experience. And I don't take it lightly. I was talking to one of my friends, and I said the reason kings have swords is because to protect their kingdom, sometimes they have to cut people, but they can never leave the kingdom, because they also have to stand in front of the person they cut to stay humble, to understand the power of that sword and when to yield it. Because that's the power of our story, right? That's the power of our life. But like, everybody has their own to write. And I like everything that you're saying just resonates so deeply with me. I'm like, I just want everybody to taste this, like, just to feel an ounce of it, just to know that like every single person is perfect as they are. But like, I even say this in business, and I'm like, you'll never win on width, but you're guaranteed to win on depth. And depth comes from you being authentically expressed as you, because nobody sees it like you see it. Nobody has experienced the frame and the view that
it doesn't
you
have the same
have.
motives that
Like,
you
that
do.
is the greatest superpower. It's just, I'm touched at such a deep level right now that I don't even have a thought. I'm just like, thanks for taking me to therapy right now. I don't even know what tangent I'm on. It's just every time you say something, I'm like, oh yeah, that, yeah. And summarizing it, but like now, like the joke that I've made with people, I'm like, most of the time people wake up and they get check engine lights all day on their car. And instead of reading them, they don't look at the
Oh no.
code, and it might just be windshield wiper fluid low or engine oil, but instead the engine seizes because you just don't look. And I was like, but then you get to a place in your life where the check engine lights don't show up. And I tell everybody, if I wake up and there's no check engine light, I floor my car as fast as possible into the wall, because I need to find some. Because if not, I feel empty. Like, I feel like it's mundane and I'm checking boxes, and I don't want stagnation because it doesn't exist. It's either progress or regress, right? It's growth or death. And so I don't know where that came from, but like, I just had to say
No,
that.
I appreciate where you're coming from. And I think a lot of us spend a lot of time banging on the dashboard as well when we see those check engine lights, trying to, yeah. And I think even the way to pull the thread back to what, thank you so much for sharing yourself so deeply, brother. It's not lost on me at all, like the trust and the love that you're affording this container. I look back even at, like, there's a lot that I feel, and it's so easy to point the finger outwards, but, you know, I'm just going to do it for a sec. Like, we weren't taught a lot of things, like how to navigate the check engine lights. Like, that wasn't part of the education system that I grew up in. And monkey see, monkey do. I'm pretty monkey. I see other people downing another coffee, burning, like, down the hatchet, off we go, another meeting, like, you know, triple shot, extra shot, let's just push a little bit more, go a little bit harder, and you're just like, yeah, okay. And then, to your point, to what end? You know, to what end? And in many cases, one of the check engine lights is a great one, is to just recognize how uncomfortable it is to contemplate your own end. You know, like, there's a series on the podcast about the, you know, just the other side. And even I'm conscious that I've labeled the playlist as like death, birth, rebirth, and wisdom from the other side. And part of me wants to just call the playlist death and dying. But it won't do that because I know it's not palatable for people. But the reality is that is one of the biggest check engine lights we can just sit with in contemplation. Like, you sitting with that question, I love what emerged, which was like, hey, I'm providing structure for possibility. And, you know, the tensile strength of the structure is just reinforced by all the challenges it's been through. Bring it at me, bro. I got this. Let's go. You know, I'm channeling the light as the Lighthouse. I absolutely adore that, bro. It's so beautiful. And giving people the awareness that, like, yeah, like, you're going through these challenges which are extremely formative for your being. You're never off purpose. That's that really trippy part. It's like we're having a conversation at the same time about bringing people and aligning them to their purpose. And it's like, yeah, but most of it is bringing your mindset, your heart set into alignment to like, actually, I can surrender and flow and trust life to the nth degree. So one of the biggest check engine lights that I invite that you can sort of bang on the dashboard or bang yourself against is like, hey, what's it going to look like you said before? You know, for you, it's not even about how many people are at my funeral. It's how many people are willing to be around and hang tight with my fam after I'm gone because I meant so much to them. You know, and that's beautiful. Yeah, so that's contemplating your own death and what your legacy as a word would mean. There's the opportunity to reflect on what does the world without you look like? You know, so one of my favorite meditations, and this alluded to before, is like I will sit here in a guided meditation where I am this chair. Like there is no Amrit. There is no Amrit. I'm just the chair. And what is this space? What is this world like? And, you know, there are days where the world, I'll just be real, is better for me not being in there. But the goal for me is like the world is better for me being in the chair and coming back out of just this inanimate experience into an animate experience. And like, how can, you know, the world be, touch wood, somewhat better? There's another check engine light you can, you know, go have a look at for yourself. So I think there are all these elements of the console which are available for us to look at, which could actually, like you said, it was a very simple question that Brad asked you, took you 2 days to answer it, but changed your life forever. That's why I'm a big fan of coaching and such tools and etc. These exist, and yet we are running life based on just a little script, which is like, and there's a few little markers and things, and we just focus on that. And I do believe education somewhat is to blame for that. Not that it's got any blame. It was designed to help people get into the workforce to bring society to a certain way in the industrial age. We've surpassed that now. The internet has changed, flipped all of that on its head. We've got the opportunity to flip things, but we're still adhering to some of the old stuff. It's this really weird, crumbly space that we're in at the moment. But I do think if we were educated in different ways around, hey, like, what is your emotional truth? You are like, you know, and the initiation of like, maybe you're 14 and you have this realization that like, yeah, you know, a simple initiation, like doesn't have to be we send the kids out to the wild and they come back. You know, we don't have those rites of passages at all. There's a whole,
yeah, let's do some
like but at the same time, like there's an opportunity for us to even just ask some uncomfortable questions. You know, it's like, hey, you're 14, your time here on earth is limited. You don't know when you're going to go. So now that you're here, what do you reckon would be a life well lived? You know? And it's a lot of pressure to put a 14-year-old under, you know? It's a lot of pressure on the carbon that is their life, but you run the potential for a diamond to emerge, you know, in those spaces. I think we are void of rites of passages. I think we're void of support mechanisms and structures. People say there's a challenge for the masculine going on at the moment. Like, masculine is just here to provide structure. There is challenge in the structure overall that's just happening everywhere because the old is dying and the new is coming. Yep. And it's not really a challenge. It's a mess. It's meant to be a mess as we figure it out, and we're figuring it out. We're providing these little, it's interesting because most men are providing each other men's circles now, where previously men's structure was very hierarchical and pillar-like, and now it's circular.
Yep.
And you're going, ooh, that's with the circle energy. So that's the whole new way, bro. We've provided new structure already. Just look at how we're gathering. It's in a circle. But yeah, it's a real interesting space where we're woven into a life now with a bunch of tools that I think there are a lot of great tools available to us. We're not exposed to them, and we could learn to navigate life a lot smoother if we were exposed to certain tools, like some of these deep questions about why we're here, what we're up to, even just general basic self-awareness, like taking the time out to sit for 5 minutes a day, 10 minutes a day, and just allow your thoughts and not have to identify with them. My God, imagine politics if everybody had to meditate. I know what I sound like when I say that, but do you know what I mean? Like,
you're softer than me. I was like, I can fix the political system. Let's just lace all their water with MDMA, record it once, and watch how quick the world changes. Like,
I'm all for chemtrailing psilocybin, by the way. If there's somebody out there that wants investors, sign me up.
If nobody hears this podcast, you know that we uncovered one too many stones.
You know what's going to happen as well? This podcast, that's going to be the bit that gets snipped out. There's going to be no context. There's just going to be that as the soundbite as well. So, all right, that's what happened. Yeah.
Oh God, I'm so here for this. I'm so here for this. And I actually want to say something, because you talked about rite of passages. I will tell everybody a book that absolutely changed my life is The Comfort Crisis by Michael Easter. The Comfort Crisis by Michael Easter. I do one a week, and if you want to know what I'm talking about, read the book, because I'm not allowed to talk about them. So for everybody listening, but one of the things I see a lot too is I also feel like, because of the education system that we were growing up in, there's also a byproduct now that has been created of an addiction to collecting more tools and having 12 hammers in your toolbox instead of picking up one of the hammers you have and using it. And, like if you hand a carpenter a manual screwdriver, an electric one, and an air compressed one, he's still going to be able to build the same thing because it's just a screwdriver, right? And so I find that the most profound breakthroughs come from the most simplistic ones done over and over. And you just mentioned the stillness practice, and I have, since that shaman, have not let it go. And it is the number one thing that I assign people. And I will even tell everybody a joke, because I used to go into rooms and keynote, and I would start my keynote and I'd be like, hey, I have something funny to share with you at the end of this, but I will absolutely show you how you can get a room full of millionaires to scramble like cockroaches. And they're like, oh yeah, right. I'm like, no, I'll tell you at the end. I do my whole talk and I leave 10 minutes. And then I'm like, amazing. So I'm going to tell you, but you guys all have to blindly agree to the rules. And like, okay, I'm like, I'm going to assign you one thing to do for 10 minutes, but you cannot ask any questions. You cannot raise your hand. You cannot do anything. And they're like, okay. And I was like, you guys are all going to act like little cockroaches in kindergarten and literally have every question in the world. And they're like, no. I'm like, are you sure? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, cool. So as soon as I'm done, we're going to take the last 15 minutes of my talk, and each one of you is going to go outside. You're going to find a spot to sit alone for 10 minutes. You can't bring a pen, a paper, notebook, your phone, and anything that you think about, you cannot write down. And the only job is to practice boredom. And then literally 70 hands go up instantly.
First question, does that include my phone?
And I look at them. Yeah. And it's like, but what if I get an idea? What if I get a blank? What if I get a blank? And the scripture statement that I made for myself, and I said, everybody spends their time being in relationship with everybody except the one person that you're guaranteed to spend the rest of your life with. You. And that practice has changed my life. Every morning, no matter how cold it is, I go barefoot out in that grass and stare at that mountain, and I crave that space. I crave it. It is sacred to me. And for everybody listening, if you want a rite of passage to do as an entrepreneur, I invite you to get off social media and consumption for 7 days. Like, delete the apps off your phone. Don't give yourself access to them, and actually create the space that would allow you to find the feelings, the answers, the questions. Like, this is your permission slip. Like, I used to keep a pad on my desk at events, and I'm like, here's your permission slip, and here's your permission slip. But you also have to try them. You have to pick one, pick a question and leave it. And you don't have to answer it overnight. You can sit with it, and you can come back to it, and you can set a date with it. Even Keith Cunningham, massively successful entrepreneur, in his book, The Road Less Stupid, which is an incredible book, but I recommend listening to it and not reading it because he narrates it. But it's a collection of short stories, but he ends every one with his intentional thinking time. And he's like, no, you have to go set sacred space and put the question down, and you sit there until you get an answer. Not for 10 minutes, not for 20. You can use Parkinson's law and set a container, but your job is to answer that question. Like, you have to create the integration space. Like, the world isn't going to give you space. The longer that we're in this world, the more noise, the more distraction is going to try to fill it up. And you have to carve it out to be able to utilize it, but it doesn't fill itself up. It's like a snow globe, and it gets shaken by the world, and sometimes snowflakes settle, but other times you have to watch it for 10 minutes or a day or two until all the little specks settle, and then you can pick them up and write them down.
And also, you do, once you've been at this practice for a while, you notice that every time a thought comes in, if you jot it down too early, you've also cut the energy to some degree. Is a level of, I don't want to say mastering, it's a loaded term. There is something sacred about taking ideas and writing them down, just using that as an example, because you're taking something that's in the ether and bringing it into ink, into the material world. Like, I know it sounds like, oh, I'm just writing something, but actually there was something that was, human beings are much more like antennas than we give ourselves credit for, right? Or maybe we give ourselves too much credit. And so the minute you take something out of the,
and both can be true.
And we write something down out of the ether, it's like that just materialized. And so if there's something sacred that's happening and you're writing about it, the universe knows you're listening. That's pretty powerful. But then also, if you write something down too soon, you feel like you've got, the pie and you've only just got, an ingredient. And allowing yourself for an idea to fully mature and gestate, there's a whole practice around that as well, going, oh yeah, this, now it's ready, just wanted to add that in there.
Elizabeth Gilbert, who wrote Eat, Pray, Love, also wrote a book called Big Magic. And I love that book when she talks about ideas and our relationship with ideas, and whether you believe in the universe or God like me. But I even made a rule for myself that I couldn't write it down until I heard it or felt it for the third time, just so I had space. But I would intentionally bring it to my presence, and I'd go sit with it and like, oh, what does this look like? What does this look like? And I was like, any good idea isn't going to disappear. Like, if it's being sent, right? I'm like, yeah, maybe when I'm driving down the highway, it's not the best time to open up my phone, but be like, oh, wow, thank you for that. But like, also expressing gratitude and acknowledging that they exist, I think is massive. Like, I swear there's somebody that I'm not even going to name their name, but they write a book on track with every idea I get at the beginning of the year, and I make content around. And we have been in parallel for like 6 years, and I like have this aversion to writing a book again because I didn't enjoy the process. Like, it's not something I enjoy. Like, I want to make videos, I want to talk, I want to express myself. Like, I want to be a walking pink mohawk pattern interrupt dude that puts himself on video, right? And there's so much credence to what you're saying, but I also feel like a lot of times we disrespect ideas by not allowing them the space to marinate, or to give them the space to unpack themselves. And everyone's so fast.
And so to pin that back into the conversation we're having around purpose as well, is really, we are, in many ways, we are conduits of consciousness, right? And so then comes into, like, Amrit, the health coach, just allow me to put that hat on for a sec. You going out, putting your feet barefoot in the mornings, no matter how icy cold it is, and staring at the mountain. Why would you do that when you've got your purpose? So back to the conversation around being an antenna, the word priming is something that, I have a great sort of dance and flirt with, because what you're actually doing is priming your antenna in a certain way, priming your being in a certain way, to tune the dial of the radio station, the frequency in a certain way, so you're picking in on the more of the type of information you want and less of the information you don't want. And really, that's what doing backflips at 85 is all about. It's like, yeah, I'm dialing myself into that frequency, and that's what I want to tune into. And all this other stuff, which is like heavy and dense and doesn't serve my being in that regards, I'm allowing that to sort of settle, and I'm just going to continue focusing on the things that, and that means getting up in the morning, putting my feet on the earth, staring in the mountain. I'm sure there's like 5 other practices at least that sort of stack in there, but nonetheless, using that as an example, the word priming becomes really useful. And that to then recognize that, yeah, we are these conduits, and what can we do about best facilitating our journey? I just feel called at this particular moment to share like this model of the wave that I've got. And so I imagine, like, if you guys can, I don't know if you guys have seen the big Japanese wave tsunami paintings that we see that are stereotypically everywhere, but you're imagining a very big wave, just doing its big wave thing. And yeah, it's big wave thing. And this was the fascinating part, that I'm putting a metaphor to something I learned from Eckhart Tolle while I was in coaching with him for 6 months. So the coaching was to help activate people in becoming presence and purpose coaches. And for me, I definitely wanted to become a presence coach, and I was already like down the path and rabbit hole with purpose. I really struggled in my mind giving Eckhart Tolle the space to allow to teach me on purpose. I was like, dude, you're not allowed to talk purpose. You can't talk shop on purpose. Your presence is now. Presence is being. Purpose is becoming and future. You don't get to talk about future states when you're the power of now, bro. Like, that is. And so that intrigue was like almost like rubbing the cat internally the wrong way. And I was like, okay, let's go learn. What's going on here? And in that conversation, the way he dialogued it is, there's two purposes in life that are always present on a macro scale, which is why I call this metaflow. You've got your inner purpose, which is for the individual, and you've got your outer purpose, which is the purpose of life itself. And people have been asking the purpose of life since the dawn of time. Good luck trying to get an answer, touch wood, but there is a purpose in us to sort of align to that outer purpose, and that he makes a massive case for that. So let's just run with it. The metaphor I like to introduce then is this massive wave doing its wave thing. Each of us individually, the big wave is the wave of life. Life is doing its life thing. It's waving. It's doing that so gorgeously. And in around this massive wave is, well, let's just take humanity. There's 8 billion of us with the entirety of creation in there, but let's just run with humanity as an example because it's an easier way to understand the metaphor. Each of us is one of those water molecules in the wave. Each single one of us makes up one of the molecules that provides that structural integrity that you were talking about before to the wave being able to do its wave thing. The biggest challenge, back to what we went saying earlier in the podcast, is everybody wants to be at the tip of the wave, right? They want to be at that tip. And for most part, we don't even know what that tip is, but society and the structures and the mainstream has taught us, like, big white house, picket fence, red car in the driveway, flagging the kids, all this sort of stuff going on, going to private schools, doing all this sort of stuff, which there's nothing wrong with that. It's a blessed life. Yeah. But there's like 7.9999999 other billion water molecules that need to facilitate structural integrity. And we're just pitching that this is integrity and authenticity and the truest expression. What about the person that's meant to sit on the mountain in the Himalayas and hold a particular frequency for us? What about the person that's meant to, live in Mexico and be a surf teacher and run a surf school and bob on the back of the oceans all day like a rasta? What about all these other things that are available to humanity that consciousness, remember, is curious, wants to experience? All of those need to live into their structural integrity too. And therein comes that dis-ease, that discomfort where, again, we pull ourselves out of alignment from playing into, this is my truest water molecule, truest structure of me. Yeah. And so this is where the priming comes back into, and this is why we sort of segued here. It's important to prime. And it's a beautiful place we're in this conversation, because priming in one-for-one in this conversation right now is denoising, which I just want to take a moment for. Like, that is the best way to articulate it. It's like just to denoise. There probably would have been a time, like generations upon generations ago, where priming meant something very different. It meant a whole bunch of action. Yep. But for us, the first step of priming, I believe, in our day and age is to denoise, which is what we've been evangelizing for the last little bit. Once you've denoised and you've come back to like, oh, this is the water molecule, and I'm not at the tip of the wave, but man, I'm right in the back of this wave and I can see everything that's coming. This is me, right? I'm meant to be purpose coach, or I'm meant to be health coach, or I'm meant to be Malaysian Entrepreneur of the Year. I'm meant to be, helping run a government organization as a pharmaceutical genius, like whatever it is that you're meant to be doing. Once you've got that clarity, now it's like, okay, let's take some action. Yeah, now you can actually start to create. The only thing I'll just quickly tangentially add there is I run the risk of people thinking that they need to get clear before they take action as well. And that is the furthest, pardon the French, it is the furthest thing from the fucking truth. Oh. Yep. as George's story tells us, right? It's like the amount of stuff you do is clarity comes post action. You need to take a little bit of action and then you get clear. So I'm going to do this for a couple of months, and that's why coaching containers with myself, like, they go for 6 to 12 months. You give yourself permission to try a few things, and if it doesn't work out, that's okay. Now you know you're in that second best place. This isn't what you want to do. Let's pivot, and let's pivot fast, and let's pivot gracefully. And that gives us this entire breadth to like experience things that may be for us, maybe not for us, but at least we can resolve all those unresolved energies within our conduit and our system again, right? Denoising. So yes, denoising can also be taking action and creating, but don't run the risk of thinking that you need to get super clear before you create, because therein lies paralysis by analysis to the nth degree. And that's a whole other thing to be coached out of. But all of that to come back to the model to say, we have our place in the wave. Yeah. And that is your inner purpose. And actually all your purpose really is. And this is how, the wave's moving. And so George's purpose, as he described it, is like, yeah, it's mobile. It's a different day to day. Who am I today? Well, the wave's moved and my water molecules moved on the back of the wave. Where am I at today? Right. And so what's opening up to me today? Right. And that openness, but it is still connected to, what does the universe want from me today? What is the universe doing today? Where is it at? And I know the universe sounds really grandiose. For some people, it's God. For it, whatever you want to language it as, the universe is here, having an experience of itself, looking in on itself. Pretty trippy. What is the curiosity point? You are a conduit for that curiosity point. What is in greatest alignment? What is the greatest flow? Where does your water molecule sit today? That's just the mental model I wanted to sort of drop in you.
I love that model, and I'm especially grateful for the tangent, because that tangent is the biggest secret. And you're very eloquent in your painting, and I've just said for years that the most beautiful parts of life happen in the messy details. And like, it is also a perfect place to land this plane, and it reminds me of something that I saw, because I've always my whole life struggled with like creativity. I literally can't draw a stick figure to save my life, yet I'm a consultant who draws pictures, right? Like, there's a reason I write in all caps and I use triangles, right, and circles, right? And then my biggest dirty little secret is I am the biggest fan of like singing shows, but auditions, because I like love the underdogs, and I love when people discover they have this like beautiful voice. And I'm like, I even hired a voice teacher, and she's like, I'm just gonna let you save your money. Like, just pick something else. And I was like, oh, I'll just make it speaking then, and I'll figure out how to like paint this. But I was talking to somebody, and I'd never actually watched somebody paint a painting ever. And I got to watch the experience of somebody paint a painting, and I literally was like, I thought that like that thing I saw on the wall, they just painted like that. And then I realized there were 700 layers of paint underneath it, and it started with one color and then another one, and they painted over it and they painted over it, and they just kept painting until it looked like they wanted it to look. And I was like, God, Bob Ross has been teaching us the secret this entire time, and I never even took the time to look. And it's that messy action. And I love the analogy of that wave, like in all of it, because as a wave is moving, those water molecules are also shifting positions based on the wave that day. And there's so much depth to what you just said that I can think about this one, and I will unpack this one for a minute in a stillness practice, or an hour or beyond. Because I think for me, the biggest calling, and I loved the frame, and I'm going to give you credit every time I mention it, because it was very different back then, but now it really is denoising to create the space for us to really prime into who we choose to be, or to call in your universe or your God, and what is the call that day, right? And picking up that phone, but also clearing the space to be able to hear it, and getting the radio dial into the right place. Because even when I teach mistakes to customer journey things, I would say the biggest mistake that I teach in customer journey is called the zone of doubt. But when I teach it to the mindset, I'm like, it's the moment you get a piece of clarity, and instead of acting on it, you wait for the next 10 pieces, because they don't ever come, because nothing is clear until you take that first step. And that's when the rest of the picture opens up, right? And I was like, if you've ever designed a house, has your house ever looked like the blueprints that you paid $10,000 to have made? Because I guarantee it doesn't.
Unfortunately,
right? Like,
no.
at some point, you just got to put them down on paper. and then start the process and make adjustments. And so the way that you tie that together is like absolutely beautiful. So I hear my 7-year-old yelling over there, and he's been poking his head in, and I want to honor him. And I definitely would, I would do this. I would love to have you back and do another
It
show
would
if
be
you were
my
ever
absolute
game. Like
honor. Yeah.
my heart, bro, my heart is full. Like you are a gift and a treasure for me. And I know for everybody listening, but like genuinely, you filled my bucket today. And I thank you for being such a safe container, and also just allowing me to get messy, because I felt like I did not drive this podcast at all.
Brother,
I just turned
you
into
did
a
an
puddle of mush.
amazing job of driving the podcast, bro. It's a total co-creation. Yeah, thank you.
I know, and I thank you for the depth of the container that you hold as well, because the way that you articulated things unlocked things in my heart that just allowed me to share in a very beautiful space that made me feel incredibly safe. Like I actually forgot if you was going to listen to this. I'm like, we out here now, and I'm covered in sweat, so I know it's a good one. I know it's a good one. Oh, and it's also not lost on me the paradox that you're also a day ahead of me in the morning, and that one always trips me out too, because you're in Australia, and I'm like, no, you're literally
it's
in the
called the
future
inspired
right
evolution
now,
for a reason.
telling me what's gonna happen.
I'm dialing in from the future.
Yeah,
it's bright.
you literally are. Like it is so congruent and vertically integrated on every single level of depth, right? Mine might be do backflips when I'm 85, and yours is inspired evolution. I'm like, no, you literally are doing this podcast from the future. Like this is incredible. Like it's all predestined, and it ties so well. And so for everybody listening, I'm gonna hit a few things real quick. So his Instagram is Inspired Evolution. I'm going to recommend, and I don't do this often, DM him anything, like any takeaways, any questions. Trust me, I know it will do nothing but fill his bucket on Instagram. It's Inspired Evolution. I personally am going to heavily recommend his YouTube, and I mean it, heavily recommend his YouTube, which is also Inspired Evolution, and we will have everything linked in the show notes. But I've literally looked at it. I've been through it. He has it broken down by spirituality, meditation, mindfulness, mindset, non-duality, which is, oh God, one of my favorites that Stephanos got me into. Wisdom from the other side, unlimited abundance. And these videos are incredible. And you've heard, like, he spends 10 hours of research before he brings these guests on. And he has some of the most mind-blowing, beautiful, wise people just dropping the quote unquote secrets, i.e., giving you the things for you to meet yourself in your path, to denoise or to tune in or to step into your purpose or live in alignment. And my only ask of everybody here is that this episode, and I've recorded a lot of these, but genuinely the level of depth here and the level of tangible action that is underneath the conversation is that it doesn't become shelf help, because the faster you pick up that phone and you just pick one and take messy action, the faster things start to fall into place. And it won't be seen sometimes until you look back and realize that magically your branding became a lighthouse 5 years after you wrote this thing on a piece of paper, and then you found it in your notebook and you're like, whoa. But I promise you, when you're building a vision and when you're putting something into the world, if the path is illuminated in front of you, you're building somebody else's vision, because you're supposed to be stepping where nobody has stepped before. And so sometimes that requires that you step into the dark and you install a light for those behind you. That's the right path. And so I just invite you to take a step towards your vision, take a step towards your future, take a step towards your purpose, take anything from today. And from the bottom of my heart, genuinely just pick one thing and give it space. And also recognize that if you put brownies in a cold oven and pull them out 3 minutes later, you're not going to get brownies. So when you take this and you put the recipe in the oven, just make sure you give it a little bit of time to get through the process so you can enjoy the brownies or chocolate chip pancakes or frozen bananas and frozen sugar that we referenced as we just speak every level of language to you here. And so I have to ask this question, because this one I'm really excited about. And I normally ask people, I'm like, you've seen Men in Black, and they hold that eraser thing that makes your memory go away. And I'm like, just imagine that everybody listening to this podcast just got Men in Blacked and they forgot the first hour and 20 minutes of it. And you have the ability right now to tattoo any wisdom into their soul that they'll take away forever. What would your tattoo
Your health
wisdom be?
is your purpose, and your purpose is your health. They're one and the same, cannot be, separated. It's,
Like I said, he's way more articulate than I am, because that would have taken me 7 minutes to make the same point. So we're going to just let that marinate. And I love that. And brother, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for
George,
being here.
the trust you afforded me to be here, to allow both of us to go into the depths of the conversation today is not lost on me. And I'm really, really grateful for you, Brother Bear. And you mentioned this earlier.
He just called me Brother
Bear.
I just love you
Brother
even
Bear.
more. Like now I'm like more in love with you. You Brother Bear.
Yeah, it's not lost on me just what you're creating here and the depth of which you're sharing yourself so openly, sharing the guests so openly, and just how in that authenticity, those depths can really transmit and shift things for others. And I guess I'm trying to take a massive hat off to what you're doing here and just allowing everybody to just take a moment to acknowledge and bask in the incredibleness that is you. So thank you so much for having me on. And it would be my absolute honor to be back. And I'm still trying to figure out if it's fortunate or unfortunate that we've bonded so deeply. I feel like I've made a lifelong friend that I've just met. And I say that with jest. It is an absolute blessing.
I don't know if it's a gift to the world yet, but we'll figure that part out later.
Let's see how it all pans out. But genuinely, man, I love you.
I love you, brother, and thank you for seeing me. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for seeing me and received at a very deep level. And thank you. So for everybody listening, this feels like a good way to throw my normal outro in, where this has been another episode of the Mind of George show where I feel like it belongs in a straitjacket. So I share the safest parts with you. And this one feels like it deserves that label for an outro. So you'll either see me in the next episode or you'll hear me in your earballs. But either way, I'm going to go radiate this cuddle puddle of love that he gave me and go give it to my son. And we'll see you guys.